I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Law. Each week it's my privilege to bring you guests that teach all of us about the law. Sometimes it's about how the laws are made, broken, enforced, fixed, legislated, or how we wish the law worked and it sometimes doesn't. This week it's my privilege to bring somebody who is running for the Supreme Court. That's the court of last resort in the state of Wisconsin. That's the big one. There's no place to go after you've been in the Supreme Court. It's my privilege to bring you a judge who is already a practicing circuit judge, a former prosecutor, and now she wants to go to the top. Your Honor, welcome to the show.
Thank you, George. Thank you for having me.
And your name is Dallet, and it rhymes with ballot.
You got it.
If I can learn that, the voters can.
That's right.
Well, you're a young lady to have accomplished everything you have, 10 years as a prosecutor. Tell us about that.
Well, I worked as a prosecutor in different areas. I prosecuted domestic violence and cases, and I also prosecuted sexual predator cases for both Washington and Milwaukee County, and I also was over at the U.S. Attorney's Office for a period of time. Some cases over there, some appellate work, but also bigger drug and gun cases, bank robberies, that kind of thing. So a lot of years, actually 11 years prosecuting.
Well, if somebody's going to get trial experience today, you've got to be either a prosecutor or a public defender, because that's where the action is, isn't it?
There's a lot of volume, that's for sure. And as a prosecutor, when I first started out and you're in court every day, you come in with a big stack on a Monday in misdemeanor court and you have 15 trials set and one of them goes. So you have to take home over the weekend and prepare for the 15 trials, and you don't know which one it's going to be. But it does teach you in a way that you can't, I don't think, learn otherwise. It's trial by fire, literally.
And it prepares you to be a judge, and you've been that too.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that experience.
So between, so I was a prosecutor, and then I was appointed the first presiding court commissioner, the first woman presiding court commissioner from Milwaukee County in 2007. The court commissioners in our county are judicial. They make decisions that are judicial. They just don't make the last decision. It's kind of initial, and they preside over small claims court. So I was in charge of the other 10 judicial commissioners, and I was running small claims court, which was really a place, it's the people's court. That's the people's court. And then from there, I ran for and was elected to the circuit court in 2008 and reelected in 2014.
Well, that's a good point. I don't go before court commissioners real often, but they always amaze me because they've got to get it done in 2 hours, something that a circuit judge might have had 2 weeks.
That's right. And also just trying to really reach resolutions for people. It's a lot of mediation, and I actually worked with former Supreme Court Justice Janine Geske. She has a mediation clinic. I don't know if she still does, but Marquette University does. And I would work with the students in teaching them mediation. She would teach them mediation, and we would really try to get people to resolve most of it. That was our job.
And then you evolved into a circuit judge.
Yes, I did. I ran for an open seat in 2008. I had a contested race and won, and have been in the circuit court since then in all kinds of areas. Lots of criminal work, but also civil the last 2 years. And our volume in Milwaukee County is pretty significant, so I've seen a lot of cases.
And that involves some jury cases.
Absolutely. So in criminal court, I had about 225, I think, jury trials. I'm over 235 right now as a judge. So most of those criminal, but I've done 16 jury trials. Actually, I think 17, because we had one 2 weeks ago. I presided over those as a judge. So it's a lot of jury trials.
Excuse me. Well, that's a special skill because you're managing a jury, you're managing clerk, court offices, court reporters, witnesses, and the people who are coming in and out of the courtroom.
Right.
You've got to have a lot of eyes and ears to manage a trial.
Absolutely, and you're listening carefully, because the second you tune out for 1 second, your mind wanders away, you hear objection, and you think, oh boy, I've got to decide that now, like right now. So it is when you're a judge, you realize just how important those decisions are, and that judges are making them in the moment. And I think that is something important for a Supreme Court justice to have had that trial court experience, to make those decisions, to look back at what the circuit court did and be able to know what it was like in that moment when the judge was making the choice.
Well, as a trial judge, you see the recipe coming in to form the cake.
Right.
And some of the rulings you're making are on the facts, on the demeanor of witnesses, on the crowd sometimes, and the interference of people who really shouldn't be making a noise back there, but they do, and the law, and eventually you instruct the jury on their job, and that's important.
It is, and I actually sit on the Criminal Jury Instruction Committee for the almost 9 years I've been on that committee, and we write the jury instructions for the entire state for all of the judges. That's been an amazing experience, having taken my trial experience and also worked on those instructions and made them so that other judges across the state can use them in an effective way.
And you instruct the jury, you make a decision as to what evidence goes to the jury room, and then you sit and wait.
Yes. But I always breathe a sigh of relief as soon as the jury goes out, because then my part is done and it's in their hands. And I think, having watched all of these juries for all these years, they do the right thing. They all get together as 12 people making that decision.
I agree with you. I think that 12 people usually come to the right answer, and I think it's so important to democracy. But even after they come back with a verdict, you have to check it over, make sure that all the questions are answered by the right number of jurors, and you have to prepare a record because somebody might appeal to the next level.
Right. A lot of what I do as a circuit court judge is making a record. It's so important, and it's what the Supreme Court then looks back at if they are taking the case, to make sure that I did my job the way I was supposed to. And it is really important to make that record, and I know how to do that after all these years.
And any litigant can appeal to the Court of Appeals.
Right. Any litigant has a right of appeal to the Court of Appeals. The Supreme Court chooses which cases to take that affect other people in our society.
And sometimes one of those appellate courts writes you a lecture saying you should have done it the other way.
Sometimes they do. And I would say that I always do the best I can in the moment that I have with the information in front of me. And you're making credibility decisions, you're taking the facts as you have them, and sometimes you don't have all the facts. And you're making the best decision and doing the work and making those hard, tough choices. And sometimes the Court of Appeals says, they clarify something, or they say that something wasn't done correctly. I would tell you, though, that most of the time I am affirmed. I have an affirmance rate higher than most judges' statewide average, which I'm proud of, and I'm proud of really just making the best choices that I can in the moment that I have.
I don't doubt that at all. And of course, you've had the experience of being a courtroom lawyer, or being a court commissioner, and being a circuit judge. And you've mentioned about the next step, the Court of Appeals.
Right.
Let's take our first break, and we'll come back and talk about the Supreme Court.
Let's
That's
do that.
the one you'd really like to talk about.
Yes, thank you.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis, and my guest is Rebecca Dallet, who is on the ballot, one of 3 people on the ballot for the Supreme Court opening the state of Wisconsin. And tell us why you're running for the Supreme Court.
Well, George, I'm running for the Supreme Court because we are at a moment in time right now when our rights are under attack, our values, things like clean air and water, equal protection under the law, women are under attack. And we have a broken Supreme Court, and we need someone with the values and experience to stand up and repair that court. And as we talked about already, I've been in our courts for more than 20 years, really fighting for the rights that we all care about here in Wisconsin, and I want to continue to do that on our Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Many people agree with you that the Supreme Court is the most dysfunctional it has ever been, and it used to be a model court that was admired throughout the country. What's happened?
It was. I credit the special interest money that's come into our state, both in and outside of our state, that's bought justice or a justice. And in the case of Justice Gableman, $2.25 million were spent on getting him elected back in 2008. And then the party that spent that money appeared in front of him in a case. It was the John Doe case. And he refused to step off the case. He refused to recuse himself. And then the court shut down the investigation into the coordination of politics and special interest money, which was very important to all of us. And it was a bipartisan investigation. It was prosecutors from both sides of the aisle. The court shut it down, really doing the bidding of their political allies. And since then, we have seen that money pour in to these races, and we've seen the kind of decisions that look like the court is rigged. Unfortunately, in my race for Judge Skrenak, he did not raise very much money at all based on his finance report. No one knew who he was, and all of a sudden, in the last 2 weeks, $600,000 has come his way by way of special interest money and the Republican Party. And there's a problem with that.
I think I read in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel this morning that over $110,000 of that came from the Republican Party.
That's right.
Now, we know the legislature is supposed to be partisan, and we know the executive branch, the governorship, is supposed to be partisan. And we know that tons and tons of special interest money, largely corporate money, insurance company money, big business money goes into those particular races. And on the national level, we know that multi-billion-dollar corporations have pretty well bought the presidency and the Congress and that sort of thing. We always thought, at least I was naive enough to think, not our Supreme Court. These are some intellectuals who want to do the job of helping make the law understandable, predictable, and ignoring politics. Was I ever naive?
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
That is absolutely what it's supposed to be. That court is there to be a check on those branches that we know are partisan. It's not supposed to be partisan. Unfortunately, in my race, both of my opponents are running highly partisan campaigns. And it is exactly the problem that we have now with people, with justices reaching end result conclusions without following the law, conclusions that look like it's based on their political allies. And if you take positions on issues prior to taking the bench, how does anyone think you're going to be unbiased? We need a court that's independent and fair, that knows how to apply the law and protect our rights in the Constitution. And the court's not living up to that now. And both of my opponents are running partisan races that would continue that trend.
Tell me how you would be different.
Well, I'm the only one that knows what it's like to be a judge for this long. One of my opponents is a judge, Judge Skrenak, for a very short time. He's the one who got all the money from the Republican Party, who he also worked for, along with working for Scott Walker. He will be a rubber stamp for that. My other opponent's not a judge and has had one case in a Wisconsin state courtroom. And I'm the one that knows what it's like to do the hard job of applying the law. Sometimes you don't like the policy that it's setting, but if it doesn't hurt anyone, if it's not hurting someone's rights, it's my job to apply it. If it is hurting someone's rights, it's my job to step in and stop that. And I'm the only one that's going to do that in a way that's fair and independent and unbiased and not pre-decided based on my own personal beliefs.
I'm a great believer in saying follow the money. Where is the money coming from? And I have the uncanny ability, like millions of other people, of figuring out which way that particular candidate, if elected, is going to lean. Who are your supporters?
Oh, my supporters are everyone across the state. I have gotten over 2,000 individual contributions. I have support from many elected officials, over 350. The majority of elected officials who are endorsing me. Over 200 of those are judges from all over the state, from different backgrounds, rural, urban, appointed, elected. Politically, they run on different sides of the aisle for their own personal political beliefs. But that's why I like to talk about the judges' support, because they're the people that know our courts and they're supporting me. They know that I'm the one that can do this job in a way that's fair and independent, and to make sure that our values and our rights are protected and that the rule of law is going to be followed to do that.
So you aren't backed by the gun lobby, or you're not backed by any other particular lobby?
No, I have some union support right now. A lot of them are staying out till after the primary, but AFSCME and the sheriff's deputies in Milwaukee County, as far as groups go, have endorsed right now. But I have people. And to me, this election should be back in the hands of the people. Everyone's vote should count, and it shouldn't be that the voice of an organization giving special interest money counts louder than anyone else's voice.
Well, I don't want to challenge that because I have no basis for it, but I would suggest that just from reading the newspapers, which is quite dangerous, that you have a reputation of really carrying the load for some groups, the unrepresented, the working people, and women. Any truth to that?
Well, I would say that I have spent a career really working to stand up for the vulnerable, working for working people, which is the people that come into my courtroom every day, and really empowering women. I've worked in the fields of domestic violence. I speak out against that nationally. I teach other judges the dynamics of domestic violence cases. And I also have spoken out against human trafficking. I was, as a judge, have been in both a sexual assault court and a domestic violence and child abuse court. And I think through that work, I do have a passion for making sure that domestic violence is eradicated, that we really empower women. And it's especially timely right now with everything that's going on in our world, with women feeling safe finally to come out and talk about years of harassment. That we stand up, that we make sure there's a level playing field for women in our state. And I'll say that of all the judges in our state, only 1 in 5 are women. So it's something I strive to make sure there's more women at the table making the decisions. And I have 3 girls, and I care about what Wisconsin's going to look like for them also.
So you are biased.
For women, no. Men get a fair shake too. But I do know that the playing field hasn't been level. And we need to make it level.
I agree. We're going to have to take our second
Okay.
break, Judge, and we'll be right back. We're back with It's Your Law. My guest is Judge Rebecca Dallet, and Rebecca wants to be a Supreme Court justice, and I'm always curious why somebody went into the law in the first place. What was there in your background that made you aim in that direction?
Well, I grew up in a household with a single mom. My parents were divorced, and really, she taught me the value of working hard. Watching her really manage trying to run the house and 2 kids. And so I learned that value early on. I worked my way through college, and I always did want to help people. That was something I wanted to do from when I was younger. That was another thing I think both my parents taught me, was really the value of just giving back. As far as being a judge goes, I had an experience when I was in high school. I grew up in Cleveland, and I was in a great public school where we had a program where you could pretend, you went along for the day in the role of someone else, right? So I remember we arrested one of our teachers. I wasn't one of the cops, so I didn't arrest him, but I was the judge. And I sat on the bench with a current judge in the city of Cleveland, and next to him, and I got to be the judge for this trial of our teacher. But watching him, I sat with him for the whole day, so I got to watch him do his work, and then I got to try this case. And it really showed me the power of the way to help people the most. Really, his job was one in the people that came in front of that court really depended on his decision making. And I see that now when the people come in my court. People don't want to be there. You don't want to be there, unless I did weddings yesterday for Valentine's Day, and I do that. But and that's great. But other than weddings and adoptions, vulnerable people come into court. You're there because something happened. You're being sued, you're suing, you're a criminal case, a victim or a witness or a defendant. And you need to really have a judge who's going to be compassionate, who's going to try to listen and do something, the right thing, and make sure it's fair to everyone involved, and the ability to really help people through that process to do the right thing for them. I see value every day to the work I do. And I got a thank you letter 2 days ago from a man I sent to prison who needed to go to prison, thanking me for sending him to prison, but thanking me for the way I treated him, thanking me for the way I did the trial, and thanking me for giving him a sentence that he thought was fair and that he worked through and learned from. And I'm not always going to get a thank you note from someone in that situation, but I am going to feel that it really is my way of giving back to my community in the best way I know how, and it's important.
Every litigant can't win. There's got to be somebody who doesn't win.
That's right.
But I think what litigants want is to be heard. They don't want a judge who puts them down, ridicules them, walks out, doesn't listen to the whole story. They want to be heard, and they will feel better if somebody listened and understood the argument they were making.
Absolutely. I listen, I prepare ahead of time, I listen, I give everyone the respect and dignity, and it's a scary place. Especially now in civil court, there's cases I have where people can't afford attorneys and we don't have a mechanism to give them attorneys. And it's a tough thing. I had a man do, my most recent jury trial was 2 weeks ago, a man who was suing his landlord because of the poor way that the house had been kept. That he was renting or the apartment, and it was tough. He did a good job, but it's tough. So really the judge needs to be there to make sure that everyone feels respected and the right justice is reached through that.
I've noticed that people want to know more about the person they're voting for or against.
Yes.
And you have a family. Tell us about your family.
I do. So I did meet my husband the first day of law school in Cleveland, and he brought me to Wisconsin. We decided to move here because of a lot of the things that Wisconsin offers, the wonderful lakes and streams. And we were talking before we started filming of my family and I like to kayak and like to hike, and our great public schools here in our state, and working people's rights, and really we have a progressive state. I say that with my eyes kind of going up because it's changed a little bit, but we're a place where we wanted to settle down and make a home and shared my values. And I have 3 beautiful, wonderful daughters who are now all teenagers. One's in college and 2 are still in high school. And my husband is a lawyer in Milwaukee, and we have a great family that I really am proud to also have that be part of my life, and to balance work as a judge, work running a campaign, with being a mom and making sure I'm there for my girls, and that I'm making the world a better place for them, and that makes me happy.
And you came to a great place. We have water, clean water.
Absolutely.
We hope.
We hope it stays that way. Yes, it's an important thing.
We have a lot of public land, and we used to have some DNR regulations to stop people from ruining it.
Yes, we did.
We have good schools, but perhaps they're being weakened more than a little bit with a lack of money. And we used to have the best court system in the country.
We did.
When Alaska became a state, they came to Wisconsin, specifically the tort system, which is my field, and adopted most of our tort system because they thought that we had the most fair, efficient civil justice system in the United States. And you want to be a bigger part of that.
I do. I see how some of that's been eroded. Certainly some of the rights we were talking about are at risk, and that's why we do need someone who's been working in our courts for more than 20 years to stand up and protect those rights, someone who knows how to do that after all these years of experience. But also working in a court that has eroded in many ways. When I moved here, it's been almost 24 years since I've lived in Wisconsin, which is truly my home. But when I moved here, we did have one of the best courts in the country. And now I talk to people who talk about the choking of justices as part of our court. And we need to get that back to a place of civility, to a place of working together, and you don't have to agree. I don't expect that I will agree with many of the justices on the Supreme Court right now, even the ones that I know personally and have known for years. And I can do that. I can disagree with people that I know well, and I expect to do that. But I do expect to still be able to work with people. And I think there's a big difference. And they're a role model for our community and for our state and for our justice system. And we should absolutely have civility on that court and an ability to make decisions.
I agree. We're out of time. Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much,
and
George.
thank you for being on the
having
show.
me. Thank you.
We'll be right back. That was refreshing. A people's candidate. I've never seen our country quite this dysfunctional. I've never seen our country quite this fractionalized, so partisan, difficulty getting along, accommodating, compromising, getting anything accomplished. Our government has been bought by special interests. It would be great to get more people, public servants, who serve because they want to serve the people. people who put people before party, who put their country before their party. People who make you want to get out and vote. This is a nonpartisan election where it will be decided by fewer than 10% of the eligible voters. Make sure you're one who thinks about your candidate, forgets about the party, votes for the person of your choice. If you don't vote, you're going to get the government you deserve. That's my opinion. I'm George Curtis.